My name's Abdullah. You can call me Abdul. I definitely want to hear questions and comments and so on throughout or after. I'll try not to make it too formal. I do have questions for you guys as well, and hopefully you'll learn something new.
You might stay, unfortunately, near the computer so they can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No worries. So we're going to talk about Islam, and we're also going to talk about Muslims, a little bit about Muslims in America as well. So let's start. The first and primary thing that makes Muslims Muslims is the belief in God. One God created the whole universe, created the universe, and God is all merciful, all forgiving. There's a whole list of other names and attributes that we have. Definitely something you can Google, the 99 names of God. But that's God written in Arabic. It's Allah, which literally means the God, the deity. We believe that's the only God worthy of worship. I specifically picked out a number of pictures just to show you that Muslims don't draw God. There's no art of like God. Does not look like a human. They don't believe that God is human. God created the whole universe. He's not male or female. He's not human, animal, plant, etc. That's why we have names and calligraphy and drawings and stuff. But we have no faces and no body and so on. We don't anthropomorphize God. Anything I say that maybe was the first time you hear it, something that doesn't make sense, you're free to ask. Yeah. So don't feel bad. There's no dumb questions. I know that for a lot of people, it might be the first time they ever hear anything about Islam. So that's what we're here for. Muslims are 1% of America. So stats say about 50% of Muslims, 50% of Americans have never met a Muslim. So again, I'm not gonna bash you for a question that's quote unquote dumb or easy. Okay, the second thing that makes Muslims Muslims is the belief in the Quran. Right, this is the word of God. And Muhammad, peace be upon him, that's Muhammad written in Arabic, is the last and final messenger. So basically, there's one God.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah, go.
They can't see the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay.
I'm watching the chat on my phone.
Okay.
I did share the screen.
No worries.
I'm glad you told me. Thank you guys for letting me know ahead of time.
Because there's gonna be some nice pictures coming up and all that. Trivia questions and all that.
If you can't see or can't hear, please just shout out at any time. We don't want,
I'll pause this one.
we want to make sure that everybody can hear and see. Okay, you should be able to see it.
I can go back.
Can you see it now? Yes, are we good?
Put ones in the chat.
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
One's in the chat, yeah. One's in real life. One's in the chat. You can see it. All right. So this is Allah, or the God, right? The creator of the universe. That's the first and primary belief that Muslims have. That's Allah written in Arabic. You can go up and find all sorts of artistic stuff, but we don't draw God, like I was saying. Okay, that's the Quran. It's the holy book of the Muslims. What we believe is for all humanity, but it's the book that Muslims believe in. Muhammad, this is written in Arabic. That's the last and final messenger. So basically, the three core beliefs. What makes a Muslim a Muslim? There's plenty of beliefs, there's plenty of actions, and there's plenty of culture, plenty of lifestyle stuff. People normally ask about the external, like the way we dress and the way which makes sense. But the three things that make you a Muslim is that you believe in one God, created the whole universe, sent prophets throughout history, and those are names that you've all heard. If you're Christian, if you're Jewish, and even if you aren't, especially in the US and other countries where Christianity is the majority, you've heard of Adam, you've heard of Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and others, David, Solomon. We believe in all of them. They're stories I mentioned in the Quran. The stories are sometimes different. And it's definitely something you guys can ask about if you're curious about that, why they're different. But they're some of the same prophets, and we believe that Muhammad is the last of them. He did not come up with a new religion, but he's like the last installment, right? The final kind of update in the last. So if it's like the Old Testament and the New Testament, we see the Quran as the final testament, right? So we believe in all the prophets. We believe that a number of them were sent books, right, to guide people. Mainly 5 books, and that's sent to David, Abraham, Moses, Torah, or the Old Testament, Jesus, that's the Injil in Arabic, or the Psalms of David, Scrolls of Abraham, Torah, the Old Testament, New Testament, and then the Quran, which is sent to Muhammad, peace be upon him. We believe in all the books, all the prophets. Those are the 3 primary beliefs that make Muslims Muslims. Questions, comments, concerns? Make sense? Cool. All right. Question for you guys. Because I just mentioned a bunch of men, right? Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, they're all men. Who are the 4, from the Muslim perspective, and no worries if you don't know, who are the 4 greatest women to have ever lived? At least
was one of them Fatima?
But Yasmin, like...
Was one of them Fatima?
Wait, pause. Yasmin, you're Muslim, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming from your name. All right, salam, nice to meet you. But like, let's leave this for everyone else, yeah?
Okay.
Is that mean? Like, this question is meant for those who aren't Muslims, like kind of more like, I'm sorry, Yasmin, yeah? I'll tell the professor to give you extra credit, but like, I want to hear from others, yeah? Don't hate me,
I
okay?
got you. Okay, I'll be quiet.
No, you're good. Yeah,
In the chat.
it's all love, but
I'm watching the chat. In the chat, someone said Mary.
Yeah, that's number one. So chronologically, there's someone before her, and there's two after her. So there's an order of four. But she's the greatest woman to have ever lived. It's not my opinion. It's not just to be politically correct. It's what the Quran says so. That Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the prophets, Moses, Jesus, they're the best men to have ever lived. The greatest woman to have ever lived is the mother of Jesus, Mary. We believe that she is the pinnacle of modesty and loyalty and worship of God and devotion and a whole list of other things. Also courage. Her whole people started spreading lies about her and accusing her of things and implying that she had done certain things that were, very, very not just taboo, but like completely unacceptable. That's society. Society's changed in our society. That might not be the worst accusation, but obviously no man, no woman wants to be accused of something they haven't done. And it's, basically she got canceled by her people before canceling was a thing. So Mary's number one.
Someone else said Eve.
Eve is mentioned in the Quran, and she's the mother of all humanity. She's the partner with Adam. It's definitely a positive, but she's not from the four greatest women. No.
What about
Khadija?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the first wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and she's one of the four. She protected him and defended him and praised him and comforted him when no one did. So think about it, at one point, there's no Muslims on the planet, right? There's the Roman Empire, there's the Persian Empire, there's Arabs that are running around the desert, chopping off heads, and they were nasty. It's just historical fact. They were Bedouins, there's no centralized government, there's no science, no technology, no architecture, they had nothing, no civilization. They're literally just running around the desert, like, just fighting and stealing each other's stuff. And that's how it was. And Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the last and final messenger. So God's telling him, you need to go and take on the same mission that Adam did, that Noah, Moses, Jesus, all of them. You gotta tell people there's only one God because they're worshiping idols. And they need to stop killing each other. They need to bring about peace, bring tribes together. They're burying their own daughters alive. That's probably the worst thing they did. They're also stealing, gambling, smoke. I mean, like basically everything that's like moral, ethical, immoral, unethical, they did it, right? Murder and all that was, and then women are treated like less than animals, all that stuff. So, but yeah, when he starts preaching the message, obviously there's plenty of resistance because also impacting their economy because they work like idols, they make idols, they would sell it. He's saying there's no such thing as idols, like these are not real, like you're lying to the people. There's only one God, he created the whole universe, so that's impacting their money directly and their power. So, so they fought against him, but obviously the whole story of the prophet is for another day. But the first person that believed in him was his wife. And she could have been like, dude, you're crazy, you say God is speaking to you, and like Angel Gabriel, sure, really, like, you come out of this cave and now you're all of a sudden seeing stuff, like, what happened to you? You're 40 years old and now you're going crazy? She did the complete opposite. The first time he told her, he was freaking out. He thought he was seeing stuff and he thought maybe something's wrong with him or he's possessed. And she's like, nah, you take care of the poor, the homeless and needy, God will never forsake you. So God's gonna take care of you, hopefully we'll figure out what's going on, but it's gotta be something good. So imagine your husband and your wife believes in you, like it's huge, it's a big deal. And no one else believed in him for some time. Eventually, his following grew, like bit by bit. Generally, those who followed him were generally the servants and the slaves, and those who are of different tribes, weaker tribes, those who come like refugees, immigrants. Think about those who are like lower in society. They generally followed him, and they were oppressed and tortured. But anyways, she was his first protector and first comforter, and she was actually a rich CEO, like entrepreneur, and he was like an orphan. So she actually financially supported the movement as well. Anyway, I think you guys can see where I'm coming from. This is a big deal.
Sophie Murray says you're talking so fast, I'm having a hard time.
I'll try. I get passionate about this and I don't talk fast. But that's fair.
No, you're good. So we have Eve, Mary, and
So Eve is not one of the four.
she's not.
Yeah,
okay,
but
so
Mary and Khadija are.
Yeah.
Aisha is another one of the wives of the Prophet, and she's amazing. I can talk about her for hours, but she's not from the four. She's a scholar and a judge and led an army at like 20 years old. Yeah, she's next level. Like she's different, but she's not from the four yet.
So we just have
They're all
Mary
great women,
so
but
far.
the four, we got two more. One of them you guys you might not know, again, if you're not Muslim. I'll be surprised if you did, but one of them you won't know. Yeah. I mean, Mary was the easiest one because did you guys know that Mary is the most common name in the world? Female name. Muhammad is the most common male name, and Mary is the most common female name because Mary, Maria, Mariam, Marie, French. It's across cultures and civilizations. Generally, people look up to her and respect her. Two more. Should I say them? You guys want to get? No one here guessed. Just online. Don't worry if it's wrong. It's alright. It's not. Should I say them when we move on?
Yeah, I don't think you know.
I'll get to it.
I don't
Last
know.
semester I presented the same. You should know now. But you'll remember it. Sorry. One of them is the mother of. So one of them was the mother of Jesus. The other one is the adopted mother of Moses. She's the one whose husband was the Pharaoh. It's like the worst husband in human history. Like think about like the Pharaoh who was slaughtering babies, literally slaughtering babies, right? And she said, "You're not God." And they tortured and tried to kill her. We believe that at the end, like the death penalty that they had, like instead of like putting people on the cross, they like have like a boulder like on top of a hill, and like you're at the bottom, they'll throw a boulder to crush you. Pretty nasty. So they had her at the bottom. Imagine it's his own wife. They had her at the bottom, and the boulder was falling. We believe that God took her soul up basically before they killed her. But regardless, they gave her the death penalty just because she didn't worship her own. She knew her husband is a fake. Like this guy's telling people to worship him, right? Like, I'm God on earth, and she's like, no, you're not. I believe in the God of Moses and Aaron, Moses' brother, Anyway, so she's top 4. She's the first chronologically. She's before Mary. The other one is the Prophet Muhammad used to call him his wife. Daughter. So one of his wives and one of his daughters, Fatima. But I think we took a lot of time, so we'll move forward. Okay, can we play this video?
Yeah.
Please, 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 please.
Yes.
Please?
Yes.
I'm messing. Okay, how do I,
Do you need to copy?
probably copy and paste it because it's not, I guess it's not clickable.
It's not a.
I got it, no worries, let me see if I can figure it out. Who knows where this picture's from? It's from a very famous show. I'll give you a hint, it's not, it has nothing to do with Islam, I just had it because it represents medieval. It's medieval, but it's not Islamic, and then we'll talk a little bit about Muslims during that same time period.
Is it a movie?
It's a show that you guys all know. No, yeah, but I wouldn't expect everyone to know Untitled. Like, mostly the Muslim world knows Untitled. Actually, Untitled is like the Muslim version of, kinda. This one, it's like famous. Everyone, you guys all know this. You guys all know this.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
Oh.
I love trivia. I love messing with people. I love it when they don't know the answer. Okay, that was Game of Thrones. So that's like Europe during medieval times. I know it's fiction with dragons and stuff. But this is a little bit into like that same time period, what we call medieval or dark ages. But in the Muslim world, it was a completely different reality. Yeah, unfortunately, the video's kind of old, so the quality isn't the best. But and can they see it? I don't know.
Yeah.
One's in the chat for sure. Or should I ask them?
Move the Zoom to,
This right here. I think I can do this right.
You can see it.
okay.
Okay. Is that good? And then this thing.
I think it should be.
I mean, that's what we do. How about this? I want to move this
Yeah, you can.
just like that. That's good. I got it.
Okay, class. Shh. I'm giving each group of you a different era of history to research. And the question is, what impact did your era have on the modern world? So Sarah, your group has the ancient Greeks. Ravi, you've got the Romans. And Danny's group gets, yes, a bit of a challenge for you. You get the Middle Ages. Some even call it the Dark Ages. Boring. See how you get on. So, sweet, yes, you get the Renaissance. Is that the word, Mario?
I guess so.
How are the Dark Ages going to have anything to do with us?
Excuse me. Sorry to bother you.
What do you want?
We need to find out what impact the Dark Ages had on the modern world.
Never was a period of history so poorly named. Don't touch. It's priceless. And I suppose someone's been filling your head with the usual nonsense, eh? 1,000 wasted years. A black hole in history, am I right?
Yeah, sort of.
You see, it's always the same. You assume it was all mud, disease, death and destruction, with marauding mobs of barbarians ripping down the good of former civilizations, burning and plundering as they went, nothing of any worth invented either, eh? Oh, no. Go on, Geoffrey.
Sorry to bother you.
Come on, it's probably not worth it. Everyone knows that the Greeks and Romans invented everything anyway.
Oh, did they now? You're sure about that, are you? You know, I might just have something for you. You seem to be up for the task. I suppose I could. Follow me. I've got just the book for you.
Where are we going?
I don't know.
Ask him.
Excuse me. Where are we going?
From darkness into light, my young friend. From ocean onto land, there are things you should know. Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Now, I know I left it around here somewhere. Ah! Here it is. Now, take a look. If you dare.
What's going on?
Welcome to the Dark Ages, or as it should be known, the Golden Ages.
Who are you?
I am Al-Jazari, engineer and ingenious inventor.
I thought you said this was the Dark Ages. It doesn't look very dark.
That's because it's all a matter of perspective, my soon-to-be illuminated friend. Of course, there are parts of the world that weren't dark at all, but in a civilization that stretched from Spain to China, the golden rays of discovery and invention shone over everything.
What civilization?
The Muslim civilization, my young friend. Through scholars and scientists of various faiths, some of the most important discoveries known to man were made at this time. Discoveries that drew on knowledge of the ancients, but have more connections with your modern world than you could possibly ever imagine.
Like what?
Well, all sorts of things.
I've got to get a picture of this.
I knew it was a good idea.
Who are you?
Allow me to introduce Ibn al-Haytham, a great scientist whose ideas led to the invention of the camera.
You invented the camera.
I laid the foundations for modern cameras by explaining how our eyes work. I found a way of projecting an image onto another surface through a small hole in a dark room, later called camera obscura.
Think of all the things that evolved from this discovery. Cameras, cinema, all share the same principle. Cool. Look out below!
Who's that?
That's my good friend, Abbas ibn Farnas, who gazed up to the heavens, passionate in his belief that man could fly.
Whoa.
Indeed, he dared to dream about flying 1,000 years before the Wright brothers. Do you know you all take your jet-setting holidays for granted, so it only seems fair to remember Abbas ibn Farnas.
Stand by. I'm ready for takeoff.
You did forget one thing, though. The tail, useful for landing.
Is there a doctor in the house?
Did someone call?
Ah, my old friend, why don't you introduce yourself to my young guests?
I am Abu Qasim al-Zahrawi. Many call me the father of surgery.
Did you actually do surgery back then?
Of course we did. In fact, many of the surgical tools that I invented are still used in your modern hospitals. Excuse me, the patient needs my attention. Scalpel?
I think I may need some stitches.
In that case, I'll use catgut
Catgut?
from the gut of animals. Perfect for stitching up internal wounds. Your surgeons are still using it today. Sorry, mustache.
Who's she?
That's Mariam al-Astrolabi, one of the many brilliant women of her time. She made sophisticated astrolabes.
Astro what?
Astrolabes. They show the sky and the stars on a small flat plate you can hold in your hand. Think of them as ancient calculating or timekeeping devices. Today you have your watch, compass, satellite navigation, helping people and explorers travel the world. Science at its brilliant best.
And all these things were developed during the Golden Ages.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There were thousands of other inventions covering all areas of life, and in the years that followed, their influence spread across the whole of medieval Europe. So you see, it wasn't so dark after all.
What about you?
Me?
What did you invent?
Well, I don't want to be big-headed, but I made some groundbreaking advances in engineering. I suppose my most significant discovery converted rotary motion into linear motion using a crank and connecting rod. It's essential in pumps and engines. In fact, I've no idea how the Industrial Revolution could have happened hundreds of years later without such a device. But I haven't got the credit on myself. But my crowning glory was my amazing time-telling machine. My legendary elephant clock.
It's a clock.
Yes. Dozens of components collected from different cultures around the world. Indian, Greek, Arabian, Egyptian, Chinese.
Wow. A United Nations clock. That is pretty cool.
Does it actually tell the time?
Wow, yes, of course. If it wasn't for me, thousands of people would be late for everything. Speaking of time, we better get you back. And remember, spread the word. This is a golden age, and I've only shown you a tiny part of this wondrous time. There are countless other sciences and inventions directly connected to your modern world. You're just going to have to find out for yourselves.
No, wait. Whoa. Did you?
Yeah,
Just stop here.
that wasn't quite so
Save some time.
boring.
Just get
Come
back to
on,
class.
we're gonna be late.
Listen, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? You guys do this stuff, then also, I know like the video was made like for a younger audience, obviously, so middle school, high school kids and stuff. But the gist, I mean, the idea, because I would prefer that over me like just going through some examples and slides. There's actually some major ones that weren't included in the video that I do want to mention. The father of modern trigonometry and algebra. Trigonometry, algebra, I believe, or geometry. Anyway, trigonometry and one of the other fields, basically, math, was Khwarizmi, same time period. He's Persian, but Muslim Persian, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I'll go from the beginning. Okay, sorry. But yeah, Khwarizmi. Another major, Ibn Sina, father of like modern medicine. Ibn Sina and Zawahiri. These are two big, doctors. And then there's a couple other ones. They didn't say directly, but it's kind of implied. These are like some of the top scientists. Obviously, they took from the Greeks and Romans and those before them, but then they connected us to that history. So when they talk about Europe, like the Renaissance, like all of a sudden people opening up books and figuring out what the Greeks and Romans had said. It's not exactly how it happened. They're kind of basically, it's a shortcut. And that's not how things work in real life. You can't just one day open up. Like what happened was there's the Muslim time period in history. So the Renaissance is Europe accessing those books and figuring out from them, studying with these professors and teachers what happened before and what had been discovered since, and then Europe takes on the baton. Like if you're running track, you pass the baton and then you run after. So, but our history books generally growing up didn't really talk much about Muslims, but it's that chapter in human history. There's a few others, but I forgot them. But one I mentioned, the first ever university, the first ever hospitals, the first ever public bathrooms, and time where people weren't necessarily so hygienic. That was Muslims did that in Spain and other places. The biggest libraries in the world at that time were Iraq and Syria, which are like if you rank right now the 200 countries in the world, it's around 200. You rank worst places in the world to live, Iraq and Syria are up there, Afghanistan. But Iraq and Syria were capitals of the world. Like think about New York City, LA, Paris, Tokyo, etc. Damascus and Baghdad and these cities, they had like the biggest libraries, the biggest universities. People came from Spain, France, Italy, and all parts of the world, Africa, Asia. They came there to study with the top professors. Those were the Harvards, the Oxfords at the time. I'm just making this up, you can Google it. But yeah, Fatima al-Fihri, I don't know if you guys heard of the name. She started the first ever university. It's in North Africa called Al-Qawariyun. It's like, it's a mosque and a university. It's a big deal. It's the first ever university I believe in history. It's like probably over 1,000 years ago. But yeah, cool, good stuff. Raise your hand if you knew some of this before. You don't have to know every detail, like every name. I don't know all the names, but you knew that like there was this kind of missing chunk in U.S. in world history.
I knew a tiny bit because it's in our textbook.
Okay. Is new stuff? New stuff? Very cool.
It's amazing we get to this age and we haven't heard that in our schools.
Yeah. Well, let me start this another tangent, but our schooling system is quite, yeah, we're very weak in terms of like different histories, different cultures, different, yeah. Anything outside the US doesn't exist. That's how we kind of like see the world. And the US is like its own continent, so it's understandable. But our history is also like 250 years old, 400 plus years old if you include, we're about to get there, like colonials and all that. Thousands of years include the Native Americans, but basically it's only a chunk of history and only a chunk of the world. But yeah, these are some pictures from around the world, mosques that were built throughout history. This is Turkey. I believe this is Indonesia, I think Persia, Iran, India. I forgot, I think Morocco. I've actually been there. I used to translate some of the Friday sermons there from Arabic to English. I was there for a few years. You guys know Texas University? Texas University. Everyone should say this. It's like 70,000. It's the biggest university in the world now. In America now, 70,000 students. But anyways, yeah. So I went there for some time, but they have a branch campus in Qatar. I don't know if you guys heard of the country. It's like a tiny country, 2 million people. It's like in the Middle East, but this is the mosque next to the university there. So I used to pray there sometimes. I think I already said Indonesia, right? Malaysia, Indonesia. One of those two, I forgot. This is in Africa. This is I think East or Central Africa. I forgot the country. But yeah, cool. Does this look familiar? Anybody guess what country, what city, what she knows? This is Katie, Texas. This is a mosque. The first time I ever met her, she had brought a field trip to this mosque. And the 100 mosques in Houston, I met her at this mosque. So yeah, it's in Katie. It's called Mass Katie Center. All right. Who knows what's going on in this picture? It's easy. What's going on in this picture? And the harder question is, how's that related to our topic? Come on, guys. Is there points for participation? Because
These kids, I'm sorry.
I
These
can't tell if you guys
students
are
are so quiet. Tell them online to shout out. Most of the time they're online.
online they're more like
What is this? Who knows what this picture is about?
Atlantic slave trade, right?
Yeah.
It's very obvious, right? So the European colonialists forcing people to come here from Northwest Africa. Okay, how is that relevant to our topic? Is not Black history or African American history. It's not even about colonization, slavery. It's not about any of this stuff. It's about Muslim, like Islam and Muslims. How is it relevant? You guys prefer if I just give the answers? Or you guys like me to ask them? You guys just want to lecture? So I'm just go.
I don't know.
Try it. If you don't know, if you get it wrong, it's not a big deal. We're all learning. There's plenty of stuff that I don't know.
Is it relevant because colonizers would often kind of like wipe the previous history of the slave? So any religion, culture that they have, they would.
It's a very excellent answer. It's very true, 100%. And about a third, fourth to a third, people debate it, about a fourth to a third of those who were forced into slavery from Northwest Africa were Muslim. That's how it's relevant. And what you said is true. For generations, they'll systematically, you can't read, you can't study, you can't get together, you can't pray. Basically, fighting your religion. That's why in the First Amendment is a big deal for your religion.
Language too.
Huh?
They wouldn't let them speak their
Yeah, so language, you can't read and write, it's like illegal. You can't really get together, you're gonna get, probably whipped and beaten. And you can't really worship in public. Some people did, there's pictures of people that worship like on the side, but there's always rules and exceptions, but generally they're not supposed to get together, worship, pass on their culture, religion, language, 100%, you got it. But yeah, about a third or a fourth of them were Muslim. I'm sure another chunk of them were Christian, because Northwest Africa, and another chunk are probably some type of like tribal religion, because Africa, right? Some type of tribal, pagan, polytheistic religion, Christianity, Islam, they were all the above. So Muslims have been here for at least 400 plus years, at least, that makes sense, for 400 plus years, or at least 400 years. So you guys all heard the Islamophobic rhetoric of like, go back to where you came from. Right? Telling me that makes no sense because I was born in College Station, Texas University. Yeah? I was born in Texas in 1993. My parents came here, 80s and 90s. So telling them to go back, they're citizens, but telling them to go back is like, it's disrespectful, but it's like there's some basis to it, they're immigrants. But not every Muslim in America is an immigrant, and Muslims have been here for 400 plus years. So yeah, it actually makes no sense, but yeah. Okay, we're gonna fast forward. So we're gonna go through like this last couple hundred years, like US history, and talk about how it's relevant in terms of Muslim history. But can anybody guess? This one's even harder than the other one. She basically got it, the first one, but what do you think? Oh, everyone knows what this is, right? These are the founding fathers, right? I'm sure we can name at least probably 5 of those pictures, maybe more. But how's it relevant?
Example, I can with our services.
Ooh, I don't really hear that. Can you say it again?
this may be wrong, but I remember reading about it in this class. But the first Islam happened
Oh, yeah.
with the founding fathers.
So I think Thomas Jefferson was president when the first ever like Muslims came to the White House, and they had like break their fast on Ramadan, which is coming in a few days. So it's definitely part of like diplomacy, 100%. But that's one small part. We're gonna make the bigger picture. It's a good example though. And yeah, also similar to that, like the first country to ever recognize the U.S. when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they told the whole world we're free from Britain, we're doing our own thing, and recognize us. And Morocco was actually the first country which are Muslim. But yeah, and then Thomas Jefferson had these relationships with different Muslims from the Muslim world. But yeah, I think even more important than that, when the Constitution was being written, there was a bunch of debates about a number of things about like what clauses to include or how to word things. Among the debates was about the First Amendment. So this is how it went. The founding fathers were like, so what religions are allowed here? And remember that pretty much everyone in this room are white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, land-owning, males, like with all due respect, they're just very, very much like homogenous, right? So they're like, okay, well, but they're drawing out or they're writing out, they're agreeing on how the country is gonna look. And among the reasons they came from Europe is religious freedom, right? So they're aware of that. That's all part of the the context. But they're discussing religion. So they're like, so should we let everybody in, like freedom of religion for everyone? And they're like debating it. Like, how about Catholics? Because like they're Protestant, right? And they had rivalry for over 1,000, however long in Europe, and it got bloody too. It's not just like a disagreement on theology, right? But there's wars that were fought between Protestant and Catholics. So like, how about Catholics? Like, yes, fine, Catholics. How about Jews? Not the Jews. Even the Jews. All right, fine. The Jews are allowed. I'm not trying to throw shade on any group, but this is the reality of like at that time period. Anyways, yeah, Jews. And then they were like, how about Muslims? Like, no, Muslims, even Muslims. And then when they said yes, that was a litmus test for what? Everybody. Muslims are allowed. Everyone's allowed. Why? I guess it makes sense. Catholics and Protestants, it's like you and your brother are fighting, but within the same family. Or both Christian. Even if they didn't think that they were going to heaven or hell or whatever, but like they still both follow Jesus, right? In that sense, or worship Jesus. So like it's your brother. Jews are like the other, but they've been there throughout European history. Christians, Jews, etc. make up like however much bulk of European history, and there was conflict and pogroms, and the Jews are generally oppressed and are a minority, but they know each other, right? The Muslims was like the rivals. It's like AMUT, it's like UH and whatever. An external rival, right? It's like no, it's not like it's like US and Russia or US and China, it's like that, right? These are two civilizations of the time, Christendom, quote unquote Christendom, and then like the Muslim world, and they're rivals in many ways, right? And if you want to do business with like India, you have to like go through the Muslims and you have to pay taxes and this and that. That's why Columbus wanted to go west to get to India. This was a closer way, this was more dangerous, but they wanted to avoid the rivals, which are the Muslims. Anyway, so this context, but they finally agreed, First Amendment, freedom of religion for everybody, even Muslims. So Muslims are relevant in that discussion. We're gonna fast forward. Okay, who recognizes this space? So we went like 400 years ago, like colonization, like colonial times, went to the founding fathers, etc. And then we fast forward, this is the beginning, early 20th century. Early to mid 20th century. No one recognizes the face. It's alright, it's not super well known. The name is pretty well known, the face not so well known. He wasn't like a charismatic leader and like a very public speaker, he was more like behind the scenes, and he produced giants though. Very important figure in US history and world history, modern world history. Nobody.
Mr. Mandela?
No, that's not a bad guess, but no. It kind of looks similar. The jaw, interesting, yeah. But yeah, no, the only thing they have in common, I guess, is that they're both part of the broader global black struggle. So yeah, but they're not, no. Different country, that's South Africa, this is US. The rest of the presentation is about Muslims in America. I should have said that. So it's not Nelson Mandela. Elijah Muhammad is older, I believe. So yeah, he's a founder of the Nation of Islam. Who's ever heard of the Nation of Islam? NOI, Nation of Islam? Nobody. Wow. It's alright. That's what we're here for. We're all learning. So this is like early 1920ish. You can Google it, but Nation of Islam was a movement that was all African American. That were like just like she was saying earlier. Like our religion was fought against. Our language was stripped away from us. Obviously we were enslaved. Obviously we couldn't build our own businesses. We couldn't do our own thing. But now it's the 20th century. Slavery is over. We have freedom. Although there's Jim Crow. Although we're being lynched. Although police dogs are attacking us and our kids and our wives and so on the streets. And all this is going on. America's still plenty racist, especially in the South, but we do have the freedom to do what we want in a sense. So we're gonna create our own religion, our own movement, we're gonna build our own businesses, we're gonna help people get off of drugs and alcohol, because these are poisons that are keeping our community down. Those who go to prison, we're gonna like educate them and help them as they go through prison. And they come out of prison, we're gonna help them, we're gonna build up their lives, and so much more. It's objectively, and I'm obviously not part of the movement, for a number of reasons. One is I'm not African American, but also I disagree with them on certain theological points. I'll leave that for question and answers, you guys are interested in the details, but generally, I'm not part of this movement, although I know a number of people, so my mentors and teachers are. It's objectively the most successful movement in modern history. Unless if someone disagrees, maybe I don't know if there's a debate there, but I believe it's the most successful movement in modern history. We're talking about 100,000 people getting off of drugs and alcohol and all sorts of stuff, plenty of things, building temples or mosques around the country. And this is before the internet, before social media, and the resources they had, like, these are people literally like their grandparents or so on, or their great-grandparents were enslaved and they're still going through like Jim Crow and all that, so it's incredible. So he's the founder. I think he grew up in Atlanta or somewhere in Georgia. I think he's from Georgia. He grew up, he had a third grade education, and he started the movement, so it's incredible. This is like, some decades later, probably like 50, 40s, 50s, or maybe even later 60s. It's, the numbers have built up, and this is like a conference they had. You can see like on the right, they're wearing full-on suits, black suits, and it was part of the movement of we need to look good, and we need to like fix ourselves up, and we need to also look the part, and we need to start our own businesses, we need to be respected in our society. All that stuff was part of it. So they're dressed in black, they're men, and the women are here, and they did have, and this is definitely in line with like the global Muslim faith, their own kind of like their own sect that they created. But a number of ways they're like traditional and global Muslims, which is that like the respect between men and women, who believe in marriage, not like dating, hooking up, and like etc. And so yeah, respect between the genders, family values, etc. And so these are women on the left, and they're covered up. Feel free to ask questions about any of this stuff. Yeah. Allah is the greatest. Allah is, what we said, the God. Muhammad Speaks is a clean newspaper. Muhammad Speaks was their newspaper. So they're think about media-wise, economy-wise, socially, politically, financial, all that stuff. They had built up a proper movement. Their newspapers are good. Obviously, the newspapers and the media mostly presented them in a way of like, these are violent, whatever, violent. They didn't use the word terrorism at that time as much, but basically they're the terrorists at that time in the eyes of the media. Although there's no evidence for that. On the contrary, even when they had a good number of following, they had like a paramilitary, they had their own like security officers, and they had like a whole group. They never attacked anybody. They were never violent towards anybody, and they never encouraged anyone to be violent. They just believed in self-defense. Like, you've been attacking us for hundreds of years. Well, now if you, Malcolm X's quote, we'll get there. He was like the spokesman, the national spokesman for Nation Islam for a number of years. And I'm sure you've all heard of Malcolm X and you recognize the face. He said, you obey the law, you be good to everybody, but if they put their hands on you, you send them to the grave. So a lot of people, so you're violent, also you're hateful, you're hate white people. It's like, bro, you gotta understand the context. He's saying you defend yourself, and everybody on the planet has the right to self-defense, and no one would debate it. Who's heard of James Baldwin? I'm a little bit disappointed. James Baldwin, okay. You know the ACLU? You guys heard of the ACLU? ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union? Okay, we'll move on. Because they quote him all the time. It's one of the most successful nonprofits in American history. Like for 100 years, probably like the 100-year anniversary, like the other day. They started off as like defending like African Americans in terms of the courtroom, but then now they defend everybody. But like they started off and they've grown hundreds of thousands of lawyers all around the country. Anyway, they quote him all the time about dissent is patriotic. Anyway, James Baldwin said when white, it's a clip. I should have had that video maybe next time. He's speaking like Oxford or something, like a huge audience. This is like 60s, 70s, and he's one of the top authors in American history. He's African American, and he said when someone who's Irish, Scottish, whatever, basically someone white around the world stands up and says, "Give me liberty or give me death," or like I'm gonna be free by any means necessary, the whole world applauds him. This is very relevant today. Actually, I just realized about Ukraine and stuff. But everyone applauds him. When African Americans say the exact same thing, "Give me liberty, give me death," everyone hates on them. It's a really good point. Double standards. But yeah, about Ukraine, so no one misunderstands me. We're very supportive of the Ukrainians, and what's happening is completely unjustified and oppressive. But Muslims around the world are thinking like the whole world is freaking out about Ukraine, but like the exact same thing pretty much has been happening for a long time to other groups like the Yemenis and the Syrians, and the Palestinians and the Kashmiris and the Rohingya and the Uyghur, the Somalis, Sudanese. It's like you only care because they're white, Christian, European. Like, that's not fair. You should care about everybody. So no one misunderstands me. I'm not against saying, well, that's Christian, Republican, conservative, European. Nothing against them, but it's like so are they? As human beings, are they worth more? Are their lives more valuable than someone who's brown or black or not Christian, etc.? Obviously, that's just no. That's the fruit of Islam, which is like a branch of the Nation Islam, and it's basically their self-defense, their whatever you call paramilitary kind of thing. So it made them controversial, but they're like in that context, like, we have to defend ourselves.
What were they called again?
Fruit of Islam, FOI.
Oh.
Nation Islam, fruit of Islam. Yeah. There's a number of other groups. I don't remember all of them, but the women had also certain things like teaching like certain skills, and they had a lot of projects. They built mosques and schools around the country. This is Malcolm X. He was probably the most famous figure that's associated with Islam. Him and Muhammad Ali. We'll get there in a second. But yeah, he spoke around the world, and I can talk about him for hours, but we'll just move forward. Since speaking in, I think, Berkeley or somewhere, speaking at a university. Who's seen the movie? Denzel Washington plays Malcolm X. I highly recommend it. Anybody seen the movie? Anyway, if you're into movies, I recommend you add that to your list. You all know Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali not really is anymore. It's been a number of years. He passed away. God have mercy on him. 2016. It was I was like my last year at U of H, and one of my goals in life was like I gotta meet him, but maybe I'll graduate first. He passed away my last year before I graduated. Never met him. I met a number of people that met him though, but he was the most famous person on the planet, especially when he passed away like that year. Like his janazah, which is the Islamic funeral prayer, was the first and only ever live televised funeral prayer in the history of America. And And he was the most famous person on the planet for sure. Because from the 20s, the whole world knew him. Heavyweight champion of the world. He's not going to Vietnam at like 24, 25. They stripped away from his title. They stripped him of his title and boxing license and went around the world and spoke about his faith and about racism, all that. So yeah, all the athletes, all the actors, all the, I'd say all, but many athletes, actors, activists, religious leaders, political leaders, and also I'm missing rappers, musicians, all of them wanted to get a shot out from him. They all wanted to be in a picture with him. They all wanted his autograph. This is not my opinion, it's a fact. Like the Beatles, think about the biggest people in all the influencers, all the blue check marks on social media. At his time, when he was going to speak, they all wanted a picture with him. So he's the most famous person on the planet. And before internet and social media, I think if the timeline was different and he was there like growing up at like he was 20, 25 and he was going up against Vietnam and like I'm not going to the war, and like, we're gonna put you in jail, we're gonna put you in prison. He was like, I've been in prison for 4 years. If that was happening in like 2005, 10, 15, like with internet and social media, he might have been the first human being to ever hit $1 billion. No one's ever got $1 billion, right? Some of the soccer players and some of these top musicians have like 200 million on Instagram. No one has like $1 billion. I think it would have been him. That's just my theory. That's him in like 1996, I think it was. It was the Olympics, was in Atlanta, and he held up the torch. He had been sick for a while, so he barely could stand, but it was very emotional. And anyone seen the movie? Will Smith plays Muhammad Ali. Okay. I feel like you guys are just not gonna answer anything I ask her. You guys haven't said a word, yo. What's going on? I don't like being the only one talking. I like to. It's cool. As long as you guys are learning, benefiting, it's good, bad. You get thumbs up.
You're good,
to ask. Yeah, I'm talking to you guys are good. I'm asking the people in my class. They're like, okay, so I'm not gonna ask if you guys know him. It's alright. But Imam Muhammad Muhammad, or WDM, Muhammad, is a son of, or one of the sons of Elijah Muhammad. All right. In 1975, he becomes the leader of the national community of African American Muslims, etc. And he takes them in a different direction, right? So certain theological views he changed, right? So they believe basically that their own group. It's like they believe that they were kind of creating their own religion in a sense. Allah and Muhammad are names that they knew in the Quran, but they weren't praying. There were Muslims around the world praying, and they had views that like Elijah Muhammad is a prophet from God, and he spoke to God. He's God on earth. There's like different views. I'm not going to go into detail. The point is he had went and studied the Muslim world, and he came back and he said, there's certain things. We're part of the global faith. So we're African American, that's fine. But Muslims are from Indonesia and India and China and Nigeria and Pakistan, and they're Arab and they're European, they're everything. And Malcolm X, I forgot to mention, one of the important parts in his life, because his life is incredible. The book, it's one of the most read autobiographies in human history. Is Malcolm X autobiography. I highly recommend it for those who are interested in any of these things. But one of the things is the last year in his life, the last chapter, he had went to do Hajj, which is a pilgrimage. He went to Mecca. He saw Muslims, there's like millions of Muslims every year. They're from all over the world. He saw white, brown, black. So he recognized that like a lot of the struggle about being Muslim in America, for them and being African American, was contextual, but there's also basically other struggles and there's other people, and it's not just white versus black, and he saw it, so he expanded his view. But yeah, so he went to the Muslim world, he studied, he came back and he taught his community how to pray and how to fast and so on. He established mosques and continued getting people off of drugs and alcohol, bringing gangs together in the inner cities. Also, like I can't even begin to tell you, these are like some of the most serious projects in America, and unfortunately we don't learn about this in school and it's not covered in the media. But Imam Jamil is like 70s, 80s and so on. He's considered like Malcolm X 2.0. Malcolm X was like 6'4", 6'5", he's like 6'5", and they booming voices and they speak and they fill up audiences, right? So he's like Malcolm X 2.0. It's a Black Power era, the Black Panthers and so on, like that time period, right? We need to police the police, we need to have our own guns, don't mess with those kind of things, okay? That's what they're known for, but the reality is, the more I look into it, like they also had programs for like feeding people that are hungry, walking people across the street as they go to school, but everyone loves the pictures of like them holding guns and the police are there. People love the drama and like, it's like clickbait, but before YouTube, right? Clickbait. So it's like that, but yeah, anyway, they did all sorts of stuff, but he's, actually that's not my picture. So it's H. Rap Brown. You know the word rap? Like the industry rap? That was his nickname. Like around the country, he was known as Rap. He becomes Muslim, it's Imam Jamil. Imam is like saying rabbi or priest or preacher. It's like a Muslim leader, it's called an Imam. So he's speaking around the world. He's based in Atlanta. So a number of the generation of people that were inspired by Malcolm X, they went to different inner cities, different like the tough neighborhoods, like the major cities in America, and they would pick that area, they would build a mosque in that area on purpose, and they're like, we're gonna feed the homeless and the needy, we're gonna take care of people, help them get off of drugs and alcohol, bring gangs together, help people get off of drugs and have like a more legitimate business, all that kind of stuff. He picked West End Atlanta. I don't know if you guys heard of West End. Obviously people like him for that generation. Went to Southside Chicago, went to Harlem, Brooklyn. I met some of those people. Chicago, no, I met people from Harlem and Brooklyn. I met his brother, his son, and his wife were both civil rights attorneys who are trying to fight for his case because he's been in prison for 22 years, and it's 100% innocent. All the evidence shows he's innocent, but it is what it is. Yeah, so West End, and then in Houston, 5th Ward. Who's heard of 5th Ward? We're in 3rd Ward, U of H. So it's a rough area in a sense, but 5th Ward, you guys have heard of 5th Ward? In the Northeast. So Imam Qasim, around the same age as them, they're in their 70s now. That generation, the OGs. 5th Ward, and built a mosque in in some of the rougher areas and helping people with their serious problems. I love it. Okay, now we're fast forward. Okay, so the history was pretty much African Americans, right? In terms of Muslims in America. 60, I forgot the like 67, 69, the laws changed in America about immigration. So people had come here before, right? People came from China, people came from Ireland, Jews came, like there's like waves of migration. When we made to study US history, there's a timeline of people coming here from around the world, Native American, white, but in the 60s, the laws changed where a lot more people came from the Muslim world, from like Egypt and like other Arab countries, from Pakistan, other like Asian countries, and which is like my parents and most of the people that I know, like 2/3 of the Muslims in America. Houston is full of people from Pakistan, Egypt, and other countries. They built mosques around the city. They start coming. So these are some of our conferences. We go to ISNA and ICA and NASCO. There's the shopping, there's the lectures, like the educational stuff. 9/11 happens. Okay, so the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the Muslim community is coming from around the world. 9/11 happens. Completely unjustified, completely atrocious, disgusting, and heart-wrenching. But what happens is, obviously 3,000 plus families were affected, and really by extension, everybody else in America around the world is horrified that any human being can do this to anybody. But also, because the presentation is about the Muslim perspective, so we're not going to really talk about the details of the political side of like 9/11, how atrocious it was, but about from the Muslim side, specifically being Muslim in America, what happened was we're 1%, we're not even like the new kids on the block, it became very easy to bully a Muslim. Because like, yo, well, that was probably your uncle, that was your dad, that was your, well, you come from the same country. And none of the above are really true, but yeah, bullies don't have to have a good reason to bully you, right? It's bullying. So plenty of cases, people going to prison wrongfully, plenty of bullying in schools. It's almost like 100% bully rate for Muslims that grow up in schools. Maybe Houston is different because like a lot of Muslims and a lot of minorities in high schools in Houston are around the country. So yeah. But anyway, let's focus on the positive. Plenty of protests and plenty of people coming together. Like as you can tell, he's clearly Jewish. So and then he's clearly Muslim. I feel like this guy looks like my uncle. Very like I can guess like what country he's from. Like looks very Palestinian, like stereotypically Palestinian. But anyways, that's interesting. Palestinian and Jewish. But yeah, so people came from all over. People, this became a symbol, like the U.S. flag. Like we're Muslim and American. There's no contradiction. You shouldn't have to say that, but it is. One of my favorite quotes from Muhammad Ali. I forgot this. They were like, "You're un-American, you're unpatriotic," which is ridiculous, right? Like these people have been here for 400 plus years, but he didn't want to go fight in the war, which should be your freedom to fight, not to fight. Like should be your ability to choose. But they're like, "You're unpatriotic, you're un-American." He's like, "I am America. I'm the part you won't recognize. Get used to me. It's my name, my voice, my religion, my goals, my own." I would add to that. It's a beautiful quote. I would add for those of us whose parents are like immigrants or part of the immigrant community. I would say, "And we're not going anywhere. I'm American. The part you won't recognize. I'm ready to go nowhere." Some famous Muslims, I don't know if you guys recognize them, these are both on Netflix. He has his own show. Yeah, no? Look familiar? Hannah? Hassan Minhaj. Forgot his name. Aziz Ansari. How many of these are like super famous? Like these are quite famous, but these are like super famous people. And yes, they're all Muslim. How many of them do you guys know? Give me one. Come on now. I'll pick on you guys because you guys aren't trying. Which one? Right in the middle. We're at U of H. Let's go. Okay. Played for U of H, then played for the Rockets. He was basically red and black his whole life. Yeah. Can I pick on you? Let's try it. You don't recognize these faces. You don't recognize any of the faces? It's alright.
It says chap, so it's
Oh, I should have picked a different picture. Yeah. Who's that? Yeah, she's good. That's good. It pops in. I should have picked. I just like the picture of it. I like that. But who's that?
Dave Chappelle.
It's Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle. But you've heard the name.
I've heard it.
You don't watch his comedy. Like you never listen to Sunnah. He's like the king of comedy. He's hilarious. Go ahead. He's Muslim. A lot of people didn't know that because he's not like just because you're Muslim, you don't have to necessarily be like public about your faith and like preaching all the time. So actually, none of these. I mean, maybe them too a little bit. These three definitely don't like present. They don't talk about their faith as much.
Somebody on mine said Shaq.
Yeah, which one? Obviously, that bottom right. Did you guys know Shaq was Muslim? A lot of Muslims didn't know that. You know that Shaq was Muslim? Yeah, Shaq is Muslim. He converted. And Hakeem is from West Africa, so he's born and like his parents are Muslim. So he's Muslim. He came to America. He's African American. He converted. Dave Chappelle converted. I think he's from Philly. And him, I forgot. But yeah, these two. I'm picking on you. Try it. Do you know these names? Did you know any of them or not? You didn't know any of them?
New Shaq.
Yeah, that's probably the most famous face on this. Yeah. I mean, Dave Chappelle's big.
Which
Okay.
one is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
So someone said that?
Yeah.
Top left.
Top left.
Back when the NBA, when their shorts were like up to here, I could definitely do that. Like, even if I qualify, I can't do that. I have to. It's also in our faith, we're supposed to be modest. But anyways, yeah, that was that time period. He's the top scorer in the history of the NBA. The top scorer, that's subjective. Like arguing about him versus MJ. So it's like overall, it's a debate. I think him, but like you could argue MJ had other things that were like he was stronger. But just in terms of shooting, in terms of points, he's the top scorer in the history of the NBA. Which is big. Actually, these three are all top 10 scores in the history of the NBA. I think it's like 1, 4, and 6 or something like that. Top 10 scores in the history of the NBA. All three of them are Muslim. That leaves, Kareem Abdul. You guys recognize the name or no? So when Muhammad Ali did some of his like very serious political stuff, like the media's there, like 100 cameras in his face, and he's speaking about I'm not going to Vietnam and all that. He's a heavyweight champion. And some of those times he was on his own. Sometimes he had 4 or 5 people in him next to him. I should have had a picture. A bunch of other athletes and stuff like Jim Brown and others were talking about like, yo, we're all famous athletes, stuff, but we're like, this is nonsense. We got to change. Kind of like when LeBron James kneels during the I'm getting political, but I'm gonna assume there's some people in here that probably think the whole kneeling thing is nonsense, but we won't go into it. We're just talking about history. But you know, now like LeBron James and like others that made kneel or like Colin Kaepernick. So that time period when they did similar, right? It's part of that same history. When they did that, Muhammad Ali's like center stage. I mean, the way he speaks and how famous he was like leading that. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you'll see him in those pictures. He's just really tall. He's to the side, a little bit more shy, but he's in those pictures. He stood up for social justice back when it was very tough to do so. Now it's like a hashtag. It's easy to do so. By that time, you risk your career. You have millions of dollars. You come from like no money. Like it's a big deal. I think everyone should respect that, whether you agree or disagree about like joining the war or whatever, joining the military. One of the most famous musicians, Akon. You gotta sing for us. You gotta. I'll give you the lyrics and you sing it, okay? I'm locked up and won't let me out. That's gonna be, bro. Come on now. If you actually sing, I wanna laugh, bro. No, we don't have to, but yeah, Akon, you guys recognize the name? He's Muslim. He's also, so like Hakeem, he's from West Africa, so he's not a convert, he's Muslim. Can I say something and never get invited again? I'm gonna be canceled. You guys ready? And she's like, nah, I'm gonna invite you. I said it last time. Probably the most famous person in America that's polygamous. You guys know what polygamy is?
More than one.
Huh?
Isn't it more than one?
Yeah, he's married to 4 women. Married. It's kind of like, he's not like sleeping with different, he's married to 4 women and they all know each other and they all accepted it, and like it's consensual adults. But yeah, it's not politically correct, but comments, questions, concerns? You guys recognize this guy or no? No, he's not Muslim, I promise. Although people have been saying that for like years now, even before he was running and all that, people were like, he's Muslim. He literally said, guys, I've been praying in the same Protestant church for the last 30-something years, and the minister, if you're a leader of a Protestant church, you're not called a preacher, or a minister? There's another word that just slipped my mind right now. But anyways, I used to say priest and I realized that's Catholic, not Protestant. But anyways, so the religious figure from his church literally went out and said when he was running, like, guys, he's been praying in my church for 30, like he's saying he's Protestant, why would you say he's Muslim? He's not Muslim. And he's not. But anyways, yeah, people still like, nah, you're Muslim. I'm like, for us that's hilarious. Like we would know Muslims, he's not Muslim. But anyways, but the reason I have him in the picture is because he met one of the famous, he had a famous meeting where like, I forgot the number, but it was like 20 Muslims or so, and he brought like an athlete, an actor, an activist, a professor, imam, a leader. They had like a number of people around him that were Muslim. They met him, and obviously for a lot of people that's really exciting. I know these two, Rami Nashibi, and I forgot her name, I think it's Rula Alouch, I forgot, that might be someone else, I'm not sure. I think I met her once, and Rami is known for like going to the inner cities and like some of the stuff we mentioned earlier. He's Palestinian, which is where my mom's from. I don't recognize these two, unless maybe her face, but I can't see. And then, yeah, but among the other people that met her, I met someone else that's met Obama. I met the rules, like the professional rules in basketball about being a woman and wearing a hijab, wearing a headscarf. It wasn't allowed. She forced them to change that law, but it was too late. Like she couldn't play, but she coaches girls around the country. I met her in Memphis, Tennessee. She's dope. She's very cool. These are names you can Google. There's a documentary on iTunes. They did a documentary about her, and I had interviewed her before that, and I need to share the clip, but I'm lazy sometimes. That's Obama in the back, and just George Bush, and I think his wife, and then Ahmad Salman, one of my top role models. He's in Dallas right now. He's probably the most famous man in America, or one of the top 2, 3, 4. He's also Palestinian, which is where my mom's from. So he's very much engaged in like politics and protests and like social justice, but he's also a religious figure. He talks about theology. On the bottom left, he's sitting this is former President Jimmy Carter. It's like the oldest former US president. You know Jimmy Carter? So we have at least 3 presidents. Yeah, so he's spoken at a panel with them, and it's crazy, but something I'm proud of because he's one of my role models. So he's 34 right now. And this time, this was like 2, 3 years ago, so let's say he's like 30, 31, and he was like, I don't know, 80s, 90s, like he's quite old. So like let's say 3 times his age. And in the middle of that thing, I watched the whole thing on YouTube, right, and I shared it with everybody. He said something, and like all of them are at a high level, like the conversations are at a good level, right? It's very impressive stuff, it's very good, I'm learning. But he says, I believe that he's on a really high level, and I'm like very impressed because of his age. But then Jimmy Carter stops, he's asked by the moderator, like, Mr. President, like, what do you think of, like she's gonna go on to the next point? And he's like, give me a second, I'm still thinking about what he said. And I was like, dude, that's what's up, man. That's a huge, like, respect. Anyways, I noticed that my presentation is very like, I always show men. This is my role model, this is my man, this is my teacher. He started a movement, these are famous actors. So I'm trying to balance it out because it's unfair because women are dope, and that's a fact. You can quote me. But yeah, I've actually met all 3 of the, I haven't met her, but Zoom and phone calls and stuff. She was the Muslim chaplain. I'm like a Muslim chaplain at Rice. I work with the Rice MSA. I worked with UH and a bunch of other MSAs as well. She was the chaplain at Columbia, but then she left, and I was like, you're leaving Columbia? For Stanford. I'm like, oh God, that's what's up. So she's working with Columbia and Stanford. She's check her out on TikTok. She has some great content. And she is an award-winning journalist, and her husband's an award-winning professor, like professor at Georgetown, and she's like, you know, has all these awards for journalism. Leila Al-Arayan, yeah, they're all awesome people. Oh, how many guys? This group is even more famous than this group in terms of fame, but maybe she's not as famous as these two. I mean, she's definitely the most famous. You guys recognize these faces or not? The first ever woman to wear the hijab, Muslim woman, to be competing for the U.S. in the Olympics. 2016, it was in Brazil, right? Rio de Janeiro. She was, I didn't even realize in the picture that that's the American flag. But she wore the hijab, and guess what? I don't know how many athletes there are that represent the U.S. Definitely more than many countries. We have like hundreds of athletes that go to the Olympics, right? We're definitely one of the top, one of the most athletic countries. But she was, they had in 2016, I remember they had like this thing online where you can go and vote for who's gonna hold the flag. Because one person out of, let's say, 200 athletes is gonna hold the flag. And everyone was like voting for Michael Phelps because he had the most gold awards, which is fair enough, and he's big and tall, and he ended up holding it. But I went there, you could vote once a day. So for like 2 weeks, I woke up every day, I voted, I woke up every day, I voted for her. She got number 2. Out of all the 100 athletes, she was number 2, she was about to hold the US flag. I would be like, that's first Muslim woman wearing a hijab, holding the flag, that would have been really cool. I know it's all symbolism, but we're human beings, we get excited. She's also, and I met her, but it was very brief. It was like an elevator closing. I was like, oh, Imtaz, and boom. That was it. She was at a conference and everyone wanted to meet her. I was like, yo, that's Imtaz. Literally, that's how it happened. Linda Sassoon is among the most famous Muslims in America, and she's, the Women's March? Women's March? Right, so it's like 3, 4, 5 women got together and they're that organization, and it's like Latino, Black, etc., like very diverse. So she's a Muslim woman and she's part of that. She's the co-founder of the Women's March, which is big. Top 3 protests in like US world history and world history have been, it used to be Vietnam. I think 3 of them now have eclipsed that, which is Black Lives Matter. So George Floyd, and so these are probably the biggest protests ever. Lights for Liberty was like when Latinos being separated at the border, people protested around the world as well. I actually got to speak in Houston, and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was there and she thanked me for the speech. But anyways, and then the third one was the Women's March. These are the 3 biggest protests, and yeah, she's co-founder of one of them. I met her multiple times on Instagram. You can see I've interviewed her. It was in Atlanta. It was for Imam Jamil. Remember the other person I told you he's been in prison 22 years? We were at a rally for him. T.I. was there, Killer Mike was there, Trey the Truth was there, everyone was there. And I interviewed her before the event. Sister Sheikh Aisha Prime, she's an Islamic scholar. She's a female African American. She's based in the DMV area, I think. I always forget. I think DMV is one of the biggest mosques in America. She's awesome. She has a playlist on YouTube that I highly recommend about the history of Muslims in America. That's it for my presentation. What do you guys think? You guys are really that quiet, shy?
They're always this quiet.
It's not me, yeah. It's not. I don't take it personal.
They are. No, I know I say that all the time. Like, come on, people.
It's all right. But learned something, benefited, enjoyed. Yes, no.
They said very informative. It was great, interesting.
Thank you.
Let's see. Ask them if they have questions online.
Yeah. Questions. They can hear me from here. Questions, comments, concerns, anything, guys. Don't feel bad about the question. If I mentioned it, it's okay. If I didn't, if I don't know, I'll say I don't know. Like.
Ask them if they know some more famous Muslims that we can cover.
Sure.
I think SZA, I know her father was Muslim.
Oh, what if I told you? Oh, that's a good one. You know why? Because she's definitely not publicly Muslim, right? Like, I mean, her content is what it is. With all due respect, her dad is one of my mentors.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he's based in the New Jersey area, so I've only met him like once or twice. Because we have an event like Muslims around the country from all the different states go to DC to speak to our Congress people. It's called lobbying. Well, every organization does it, but I was involved from Houston, so I met him there. He goes from New Jersey. It's CARE, like the organization. It's like Muslim lawyers and Muslim lobbyists. Anyways, I met him like twice, and then like I stayed in touch, and I called him sometimes, and I texted him, and I've gotten Instagram live with him. But I never brought her up because like. Yeah, well, anyway, she's famous, yeah. I had some of my friends tell me like, oh my god, look at this girl. I'm like, yo, I know her dad, like just chill. But yeah. Are we talking about the same person? We're talking about, am I talking about the right person? Yeah, her dad is definitely Muslim. He's not only Muslim, he's one of the Muslim leaders in America. Yeah.
She said, so they said definitely walking away with more fun facts. Here, and they didn't know Shaq was Muslim.
Let's
and
go.
haven't heard about Akon since Put the Blame on Me.
He hasn't been super relevant. I heard that he made it big with Bitcoin. Like one of my friends, like, he took his 100 million to $1 billion. I don't know if it's true, but that's what people said. So that he's been low key for some years.
So Jadrian said, can you speak more about the Muslim view of polygamy?
Out of all things, I mentioned like a million different things. I don't mind. Yeah, you can tell. Like, I'm very comfortable with my views, and I like to. I don't try for controversy, and I love to. I think university is a place to like discuss and agree to disagree. I can definitely talk about that. I think there are far more important things that I brought up, but that's okay too if you guys ask me about it. It's very simple. Muslims don't believe in like sex outside of marriage. So premarital sex, extramarital sex. But pretty much everyone agrees that you shouldn't be cheating on your husband or wife. We also don't believe that you should be sleeping around before marriage. Very controversial. Are all Muslims doing that? Of course not, right? They're not all like sticking to that, but that's what our faith teaches. And it's always been that way. The religion is not going to change. I mean, you do what you want, but like that's what our faith teaches. I believe in it strongly. And but it does allow that you are married. A man is allowed to marry more than one wife. I don't know if there's anything more to say. What does he want me to say?
Is it in the Quran or is it in?
The Quran allows it. Okay, I know how to
Maybe you could speak about the difference between the Quran and Hadiths, like what?
Okay, I can do that as well.
I don't know. I mean,
I'll
if
do
you
both.
want to.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
I know it's real quick. Hey, tell us everything about Islam.
Yeah. Tell us about everything. Go. Yeah. 14. I didn't mention this, but like when I talk about Muhammad and I went through like medieval and then it's 1400 years, right? And like I said, it's like it's not the first religion. It's not a brand new religion. It's not how we see it. It's a continuation. So thousands of years of history. But yeah, let me do this real quick. No civilization. If I'm wrong, definitely someone can correct me. This is what I believe though, or it's what I've been told. Yeah? There's no civilization in human history, no culture, no tribal group, no country, no nothing in human history that didn't have polygamy. Probably as a minority. I'm pretty sure they're all been minorities. It's basically men that have the means, right? If you're the prince, the king, the business leader, whatever, tribal leader, however much. Basically, in every society there's like status. I'm not saying this is how it should be. I'm just saying this is a reality, right? Historically, you study the sociology and anthropology. Pretty much every culture in a society had its own way of creating a pyramid of like hierarchy of people, right? The pharaoh they had their slave at the bottom and pharaoh at the bottom. But everyone else has more or less dramatic, but some type of hierarchy. Today we have like the blue check marks on social media: rappers, athletes, actors, politicians. So this is a fact. And how much money you have or how much fame you have. So every society has a hierarchy, and throughout human history, the men that were at the top of the hierarchy basically had multiple women around them. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm saying this is how they did it. Our faith didn't come and produce, like Islam is known for, like a lot of the comedians will joke about, oh, Muslims can marry more than one. But Muslims didn't invent it, like it's not like a new thing. In fact, our faith, what it did is it actually limited it. It says 4 is the maximum, and there are certain rules. So it's not as, as fun and games as like somebody might think, like guys might think like, oh, it just means more women, but like you have to pay for all the bills, it's financially you have to get them. It's also marriage, it's not hooking up. Okay, it's like one day and then throw them to the street, like they have kids, you gotta take care of them. So there's rules and regulations. And yeah, but I'm not sure it's part of our faith that it's allowed. What else? I think that's good on polygamy. But she made a good point. So our theology, legal stuff, spiritual stuff, pretty much every subject and every topic related to Muslims, all comes back to 2 primary sources. I guess I didn't say that directly, but it's the Quran, which we believe is the word of God, and then Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger. So his quotes and his practices, his teachings, his lifestyle, to use a modern word, it's called the Sunnah. Those 2 together are like the primary sources we use to extract like, should we do this, should we not do this, is this right, is it wrong? And then of course, 1,000+ years of history, scholars have commented on those 2 books, basically, those two sources have commented on it, and because things change with time and place, you always have scholars that are gonna people, like when you do a PhD dissertation, you have like a thesis, you're trying to like come up with something new, you research everything before they come up with something new. So obviously scholars have their place in terms of like staying up to date with the times and places. But every time period, our goal as Muslims is to go back to these to what we believe is revelation, to these scriptures, and to so the principles never change, and then like times and places change. So some things can be flexible, some things aren't. Yeah, what else? What are your questions, comments, concerns?
Let's see what else, because I'm talking then.
Sure.
Somebody said you don't bend your life to fit religion. Wait, you bend your life to fit your religion, but don't bend your religion to fit your life.
So that's not ideal. Our faith will teach that. Not everyone necessarily agrees, but I agree. Yes, I agree with them. We have a famous quote, famous slogan. What's the word? Tagline. I don't know what the word is, but yeah, there's an organization in California. I think it's pretty famous. It's a Muslim group or like a community. And they say, "Come to Islam as it is. Come to Islam as you are. To Islam as it is." It's like, so the context is like a lot of things I already mentioned. And I said it. I didn't say it in the presentation, but I was saying earlier. We're kind of joking. She said she works at a winery, and I was like, we don't drink, we don't smoke, and so on. So now, if you put all the things that we said together, it sounds like a lot of rules. Fair enough, I get it. I was born and raised in the US, I get it. I went to college. I was probably the only one that went to college that didn't smoke weed, but I'm sure others didn't. But I'm sure it's a majority, but it is what it is, right? I'm not judging. I love everybody, but yeah, so you can look at the faith as like, especially relative to other faiths, but like, there's a lot of rules, a lot of like do, don't do, like heaven and hell. I didn't talk about that, but sins can lead you to hell, but we also believe in forgiveness and God forgives. The point is you can look at it like that, but lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Bending your religion.
Yeah. So that quote is saying that like just because you have certain mistakes or you're not applying all those rules, it doesn't mean that you're not still Muslim if you believe it. Nor does it mean that if you're not Muslim that you can't we can't get along and that we can't have a relationship and that we can't get together and go to events. It's not saying that. So yeah, it's like as you are, it's acceptable. We're all work in progress. None of us are perfect. Just because I'm presenting and I do regularly present myself doesn't mean I'm applying everything. Our faith doesn't say that you don't apply all of it means you're doomed. It doesn't say that at all. Even if some people have that view. So come to Islam as you are, to Islam as it is. But also the other part of the quote is like, don't change the faith just because you don't like certain things. Like, if like weed is part of your lifestyle, with all due respect, don't be like, oh, actually our faith actually allows it because, no, you know it doesn't. Like, you don't have to justify it. Like, you still do it, it's alright. I wonder if people of other faiths are, this is not the right room for this, right? I wanna know, like, what do you guys believe in? What are your faith? Obviously, If you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem like anyone's interested. Is anybody part of their religious group that's actually active in, no shame, no judgment. Are you, anybody who goes to church on Sundays, for example? You go to church? You know, I was gonna guess, if I had to guess, I would say you're Christian, but you feel strongly about your Christianity? Is something important to you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I respect that. Is it easy to be Christian all the time? It's easy on Sundays and hard on like Friday nights?
It's like hard. It's just like
Just being honest,
it's
you're
hard
like-
in college.
It's hard in college?
Yeah, because like there's
It's hard in high school too, no?
Yeah, like we're peer
And
pressure.
it's gonna be hard after college too. Sorry, I'm not, but I mean, because I'm 20, I've been through, college is tough. What were you saying?
Just peer pressure.
Peer pressure?